Welcome back, friends. Your host, Rayanne Irving here, sex trafficked girl, empowered woman, and your loudest cheerleader. This episode is supported by me. However, I am supported by Camino Ranch. So I would like to take this moment and give a shout out to Lorraine Coolin. Lorraine, without you, I don't know where I would be. You gave me a home and a safe place to rebuild my life and to be of service. Thank you for opening your heart to me, for believing in me. I love you. My horses love you. My dog loves you. And of course, Holly, the loudest, weirdest cat ever, loves you too. For those of you that don't know, Camp Camino is an opportunity for kids 8 to 18 years old facing challenges to benefit from the experience of equine interaction, which creates and improves confidence, empowerment, focus, connection, responsibility, and leadership abilities. Campers participate in all aspects of the animal's care and keeping, including exercising, feeding, grooming, general ranch and horse care duties, plus a structured, goal-oriented equine-assisted learning program that emphasizes a building block curriculum of life skills. If you would like to know more about Camp Camino, I encourage you to check out the website caminoranch.weebly.com. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to leave a review at Apple Podcasts. I truly value each and every star that allows for others to help find us among the millions of awesome podcasts out in the world right now. Your support is so important to us. It means so much to us. I cannot thank you all enough for joining in. But if you're not into reviews, and I totally get it, however, you would still like to support the podcast and to help keep us going, you can donate at paypal.me.RayanneIrving. Okay, and now to the main event. It is January 2021, and for those of you who don't already know this, January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And it's such a big deal, you guys. I mean, it was only a year or two that I first found out that this month was being dedicated to helping others, to helping kids like I was, and to helping other survivors to be represented and to find their voice within the community and even to connect to one another. It's such a big deal. And so in honor of that, our first episode of the year is with fellow sex trafficking survivor, Chiquita Tillman. Chiquita is a woman of culture, a woman of color, and a woman of immense grace. For some, this episode might be triggering. So if you are struggling right now with your mental health, we applaud your strength. And we also encourage you to put this episode aside for another day. This episode, you guys, it starts out a little dark. There are some spaces there where it gets a little heavy, but that's just the reality of childhood sexual trauma. And we are not here to shield you from that. We are here to open your eyes to it. But don't worry, because I promise after sitting with Chiquita and myself for an hour, you are going to believe in happy endings. By the time we say goodbye, you will be cheering Chiquita on. She's such an incredible soul. So sit back and allow fellow Hollow to hype you up, because our next guest is Miss Chiquita Tillman.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, thank you for joining us today. It's an honor. Absolutely. You are joining us from where in the country?
I am currently in Georgia.
You are in Georgia, but you were saying that you're going to make the move back to California?
Yes. I am relocating back. Yes. Definitely soon. So, yeah, my time on social media is going to be very limited for the next month.
That is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not. Sometimes you You need that time away.
Yes,
Sure.
I agree. Especially when you are an advocate, I think it's nice to take a step back and be able to live your life,
Yes.
and not be constantly trying to be in service of others. Sometimes you need to take a step back and be in service of yourself and your family. So I applaud
Definitely.
you for
Thank you.
taking
Thank
that
you.
time. But I'm also grateful that before you take that time, you agreed to sit down and talk with us. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I first became aware of yourself through Youth Underground, which seems to be a fantastic platform, not just for youth to learn about our stories, in preparation for just for their own awareness campaign that they're doing and to help us end trafficking. But it's also been a platform for us to gather and to get to know one another and to, I want to use the word rejoice in our strength and lean on one another,
Yes.
as we are all doing what we can to help and bring, just to bring an end to the very things that led us down our path. Right. So,
Yes. Yes.
like, shout out to Youth Underground and to Rasha
Yes.
Hamak because,
Yes. I
yeah,
love her.
oh, adore her. And if you guys
Mhm.
don't know or haven't checked out Youth Underground, get on that because they are one of the, they are just one of the most innovative and generous
Genuine.
platforms for people who have exited or are exiting or are looking to exit. I don't think I've ever met another CEO of an organization that is so dedicated to including our voices, because you don't get that very often.
No, you do not. And I mean, she has a genuine heart, which I love. She
Mhm.
really, really loves what she does, for the youth and for survivors. And I love her. I really love her heart.
Yes. And I know that wasn't the first place, or at least I don't think that was the first place that you shared your story. Um,
No.
no. So I was wondering, for those that don't know your story, if you could, before we get into, other aspects of the conversation, if you could walk us through or give us, some background history on yourself.
Sure, definitely. Well, as a child, I endured a lot of sexual child molestation and physical abuse, which ultimately led me to running away from home at the age of 15. And I ran away from a small town in Missouri to Los Angeles, California, which is a huge, huge city. And I ran away via a Greyhound bus. So once I arrived, of course, I didn't know anyone there. I heard that I had an aunt that lived there, and I just figured once I got there, I'll find her. We're coming from a small country town. I didn't know anything about directory assistance or anything of that nature. So I ended up wandering around downtown for a few days until I ran out of money, and then I was just homeless. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how to reach anyone. And I became, hungry, cold. And a young man approached me and we started talking. And I told him that I was trying to find my aunt and he offered to help me. I went home with him. He gave me a bed to sleep in. And then the next morning, he crawled into the bed and he raped me. And then he sold me to a pimp. And
Wow.
so that began my life on the streets. Once the pimp took control, he had one of the girls to show me the ropes. And I was beaten very badly by the pimp because I initially did resist. I was beaten again because I allowed a John to control the situation, in which so I learned the lesson. I learned not to do that again. After a few months on the streets, they did what they called a prostitution sweep, where they gather up all of the prostitutes on the street that they come in contact with, and I was new to them. I gave a fake name, fake date of birth. And so they wanted to, I guess, teach me a lesson. So they took me to a women's jail. So I spent the night in a women's jail at the age of 15. And the next morning, they called my fake name to go to court. I went to court. They dropped the charges because it was loitering, was nothing else. So I'm sitting outside the jail. They don't know, the pimp and the other girl does not know that I'm released. So I'm sitting out. I feel like this is a chance for me to get away. I don't know where I am still. I'm sitting outside, and this Caucasian girl around the same age as me, she came and she sat down next to me and we started talking. Now she's a female, so I just felt comfortable because she was a girl. And she said, you can come home with me. I'll help you find your aunt. And so I felt safe, and I went home with her, and there was actually 3 pimps in this house. So her pimp took control of me, and he was worse than the first pimp. Like, we literally had to sleep in a king size bed in one room. We could never be alone. He would wake us up at 6 a.m. in the morning to take a bath. He would stand there and watch us. We could never go anywhere unwatched. And I ended up, after a few months, becoming pregnant by this pimp. And I was very sickly. I didn't know I was pregnant. I just endured a lot of rapes and beatings during this time. And I ended up losing my baby when I was about 6 months. And I was never able to have children after that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a lot to take in. Not just as a listener, but for yourself, only being so young, and in such a volatile place. Just wow. Yeah. So, obviously, I don't want to rush you through that story at all. How did you finally break away from that situation?
I actually was rescued. One particular day, I was really, really sick. Again, I didn't know I was pregnant. I just knew I was very sickly because I was very skinny. I was under 100 pounds. And I went into the store that had like a newspaper stand in the back. And I was standing there reading. And I knew I was being watched, but I was just too sick. And the security guard had came into the store, and he was at the counter. He didn't work there, but he was there on his lunch hour. I found out later. He was watching me, and I just thought he wanted a date. And I was just like, no. And he left. I waited a few minutes, and I went outside, and he was standing by his car, and he said, can I talk to you for a minute? And I just said no, and I started walking off. And I just heard a voice so clear, crystal clear, said, trust him. And I turned back around and I went to him, and he was like, why are you out here? You're just a baby. And I knew I was being watched, so I tried to pretend as if he was a potential customer. And I just told him that they're watching me. I can't get away. I just told him a little bit. And so he said, meet me here at 5 p.m. and I'll get you away. And 5 o'clock is when the pimp comes to pick us up in the limousine. And so I just held on to it. I held on to that hope that, maybe I could get away. When 5 o'clock came, I saw the limousine coming, and the girl, she came and she said, it's time to go. And I lied, and I said, well, I have a customer around the corner. And she said, well, you better hurry up before the limousine turns around. So when I got around the corner, I just took off running, and I kept hearing my name being called, and I thought it was his henchman coming after me. And I was like, they're just gonna have to shoot me in the back. But it was actually the security guard had came back, and I jumped in the car, and he took me to a hotel, and he went and got me some food, and he said, stay here. I'm going to bring my mom and my grandmother in the morning. Well, I didn't believe him, but at that time, I just felt like I was safe from the pimp. But he actually did bring his mom and grandmother the next morning, which turned out to be my now adopted family.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are some truly magnificent, kind-hearted people in this world. you know, and it just always warms my heart to hear, you know, an ending like that, or not an ending, but, you know, just, yeah, my heart is just overwhelmed for you right now. I'm just feeling all the good feelings. That's really beautiful. So, you know, I'm always curious about so many things when I'm speaking to another person who has endured, you know, exploitation and abuse, right? Because I find that even though our stories, they all differ in so many ways, the emotions are all very familiar. You know, there's always a place of connection. And I was wondering, though, with the girls that you were working with, was there any kind of, you know, codependency? Was there any relationships that you formed with the girls that you were working with when you were on the streets?
No, not really. Because there was a lot of jealousy, especially with the second one. She was in love with the pimp. So yeah, so that was not a good situation at all. Period. But no, there was a lot of jealousy there. One thing I will say that she did protect me from was drugs. Whenever other pimps would give me cocaine, she would take it from me, and she would always say, "Never touch this." But she was addicted.
Right.
So she would take it from me and tell me never to use it, and I never did. But no, I did not form any type of relationships with the girls on the streets at all.
Was it?
I mean, I was a child. I was very, I was scared. Very scary out there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Was it familiar territory in the sense of what you ran away from and what you fell back into? Do you think that it was easier or harder to endure what you were going through, and did it make it easier for you to escape because you already had that survival system in place, because you had already left a previously, abusive and exploitive childhood, and then you ended up back into a similar situation, obviously different players, right? But still emotionally, physically exploitive, and you were able to extract yourself from that. So how do you think that's, how did that work for you? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
They were, even though it was similar, like I said, the second one was more ruthless, was more controlling than the other one. And so I learned how to retreat within and to pretend as if, like I was an actress or something. Like it wasn't me being, violated. And so that's what I learned from both, was how to retreat within and just pretend like it wasn't me that it was happening to. I also believe I became even more submissive, from the first pimp, with the beatings and everything. I ended up being submissive. And so that taught me going into the second one.
Yeah, that fear conditioning, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
it lays out that fear conditioning. It really, I think it affects you. Well, at least it affected me long term. I found myself doing similar things wherein I think it was Doreen Virtue was the first place I heard it from. She wrote a book and they called it fawning, which is where you learn to just tell people whatever it is that they want to hear and whatever it is that they need in order to self persevere, right? And I don't know about yourself, but when I exited the streets, that was one of my biggest challenges in reclaiming my authenticity and in getting to know myself, was to recognize when I was manipulating out of self-preservation and learning to know what was it that I really wanted versus what was it that I was doing because my survival instincts had been tapped into, and I, felt threatened in a way. And so, and a lot of things, I don't know about yourself, but a lot of things felt threatening to me when I got off the streets. I mean, there was the fear conditioning extended itself to law enforcement. It extended to the men in my life. It extended to the females in my life. There were very few people that I felt were trustworthy.
Right.
Due to the fear conditioning and also due to the experiences, right? So when you first exited, what was that like for yourself? Was it easy to trust the people who were trying to help you, or did it rage against everything that you knew to be true?
It was not easy for me to trust anyone. And of course, they didn't know how to handle, because I spiraled. I went into a deep depression. I started acting out. I, started drinking very heavily. I just started doing, just criminal stuff, just trying to cope and not knowing how to cope. But definitely not trust. I didn't want anyone to hug me. I didn't want anyone to show me any affection. I didn't want anyone to say, I love you, I care, because to me that, was false.
Yeah.
I heard that from the pimps, and, and, and they, they beat you, they rape you. And so anyone showing me any type of affection just was not cool for me.
Yeah.
I was very cold at this point, very hard. And it was just, I just didn't trust anyone.
Yeah. I can really relate to that, to any time, well into my 30s, to be honest with you, where people would say that, I love you, and I'm looking for, what is your motivation here? And,
Right.
and I'm picking apart why does they think they love me, and I'm leveraging it against what they don't know about me. Right. And then, and I think that that's a self-protectant mode, and it truly affects, I think your outlook on whether or not there are truly good people in this world, because you learn to question the people that are trying to help you because of all your experience with the latter, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
When did things start to turn in a more positive direction for you?
I would say, after a few failed relationships, um, because I realized, I was a seductress, like, but that's what I had learned. You learn how to seduce. And I found myself, just seducing whoever I wanted to get. That's how I got them. And then the outcome wasn't good for me. And I knew that I had a problem. I just knew, like, something's not right. I'm just, this behavior is not normal. And so I went to counseling. I found a counselor who specialized in trauma, and I did extensive counseling. I went all the way back to childhood, and we dealt with everything from childhood up into, that point. And it was just a freeing experience for me learning a lot about myself, me knowing that a lot of things I took responsibility for I should not have as a child. I had no control over certain things. The suicide attempts, it was just, I just learned a lot, and it was just freeing for me. So that was a turning point for me. I just realized, I am worthy, and I'm not going to be ashamed of what happened to me, because that I was a child once again, had no control over certain things. And that was just my turning point, just learning, who I was and that my past was not going to determine who I was going to become.
If you're open to it, I'd love to talk about the suicide attempts,
Sure.
because I think that that's something it's not talked about a lot, or at least
Mm-hmm.
I haven't, and I've been combing the internet for the real stories about, not just what happens when you're on the
Mm-hmm.
streets, because
Mm-hmm.
those stories are those are personal stories, and their personal interpretations and their perceptions as people are moving through their healing journey. Like when we look back, the way that I view what happened to myself 20 years ago in this very moment in day is different than how my 20-year-old self looked at what happened to my 16-year-old self, right? So I mean, I feel that
Mm-hmm.
healing is not a linear event, that it is more of a downward spiral, in that we are constantly revisiting these wounds
Mm-hmm.
and healing them on different levels, as we get to the core, uh, you know, when things first took place, or when they first really started. And so one of the things that I'm always wanting to hear about is people's journey towards self-empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that a lot of people don't. I think that it could be expected that there would be suicidal fantasy, or, that's a certain amount of people end up dying by suicide
Mm-hmm.
after they exit something, that was as traumatizing as what you yourself experienced. And I would love if you would, tell us, what was it that was going through your head that led to this feeling that the only way out was by taking your own life? And what was it that helped to keep you go forward? What was it that helped you to be able to move through that feeling of darkness?
Well, the first attempt, I was 12 years old, and it was after my molester, my mom's boyfriend. She decided she was going to marry him, and she did not want me to go with them, and I was to go live with my father, who I did not know. I did not have a relationship with. My father was very abusive, and he was an alcoholic as well. And it just got to the point where I was like, why don't they love me? And I didn't want to be there anymore. I didn't want to be on the earth anymore. And so I took a entire bottle of pills and lay there. And actually, my half sister, she was 4 years younger than me, came in to the room and she tried to wake me up, and I wouldn't wake up. But she called her mother at work and she rushed home and they got me to the hospital. Doctor said if it had been 5 minutes later, I wouldn't be here. Right. So that was the first suicide attempt. The second one, I was about 28 years old, and I had saw my biological mother for the first time since 14, and she still rejected me. My father rejected me, and I was at that point where I couldn't take it anymore. Like, why don't they love me? What is it about me? I hadn't gone through counseling yet, so my mind was, what's wrong with me? You
Mm-hmm.
know, why can't they love me? And what did I do so bad that they just don't want me? And so I attempted suicide again. And when I woke up from the attempt and realized I was still here, I just cried and cried and I cried out to God, and I'm just like, what do you want from me? Why am I here? And I just felt, I don't know, I just felt um, a connection with God at that moment. And a friend of mine, she called and we talked and she prayed, and I just made a decision that I wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was not going to want to harm myself again. And that's pretty much how I got through that.
Well, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
You found faith.
Yes, I did. I did. And not to say that I have not had those thoughts throughout the years, because sometimes, something will trigger you. And if you don't catch yourself, you will find yourself spiraling backwards, back into a dark place. And those thoughts will come again. So I've had to learn how to, when something triggers me, to identify it and to deal with it right then and there. Because at some point we have to hold ourselves accountable to, our emotions and where we're going and stuff. So I've learned how to do that so I don't go too far to the left anymore.
Yeah. Well, you've taken responsibility for the outcome of your life. Even though you didn't, you weren't in control of what happened to you as a child, you've taken responsibility for your adulthood. And that is truly, it's an extraordinary feat. It is challenging and upsetting, and it can be incredibly daunting and painful at the same time, and all of the things that come with adulthood, are exasperated, I feel, by, things that happened when we were younger, regardless of whether or not we were an active, willing, engaging participant in our younger years and the things that we were going through, enduring, or examining or exploring, right? So I'm always curious as well, because you yourself have taken responsibility. And as you said, when you feel those triggers, you engage with them now to understand yourself better. What were some other physical manifestations of the emotional trauma that took place for you? How did your experiences when you were on the run and when you were moving through and towards your healing journey, how did they manifest in your body?
Well, like I said, I did turn to alcohol too. Alcohol was a huge part of me during that time. And I became very sexually, active. I did a lot of criminal activity. I became a drug dealer. I became a dancer, a private dancer. I did some criminal financial stuff. I just acted out. I just became this cold-hearted, can I say bitch?
Oh, yeah. This is an explicit podcast.
Just a cold-hearted bitch, and you couldn't tell me nothing. I was going to live my life the way I wanted to live it on my terms. That's who I became. I mean, I just was I was a mess back then, but I was so determined to not let anyone tell me how to live my life, how to behave, how to act, or anything, because I had been under so much control for so long and abused. And also I fought a lot. I used to be a fighter. I used to fight. I was so angry. I was so hateful. I didn't like people. I was just really cold. I was really mean. And so, yeah, the manifestations, I was not pretty at all. It was not pretty.
Well, I think that that's something that's not spoken about nearly enough, is the direction that the healing can take us in, and our expressions for our pain can become extremely volatile and self-sabotaging and damaging in an effort to self-protect. I feel as though, like yourself, I too engaged massive risk-taking behavior. Like I was almost daring the universe to call me out on my shit. And I was like, really? Like, you think you're going to take me down? I have survived X, Y, and Z, and I dare you to come at me right now, and I was all about, same as yourself, I was really into manipulating these situations and the people around me. I was angry and I was looking to extort from them without giving anything in return, hence the seductress, and I didn't go the route of I wasn't sleeping around a lot. But that had more to do with just my own personal psychology and the shame involved in the way that, how I had, the way in which I had entered into prostitution was, much like yourself, it was through a ton of rape, right? And I didn't know how to take back that power. And so I had a lot of shame around sex. So, I would go celibate for like a year at a time. And then all of a sudden I would bust loose and, take down. And it was almost, I know that people talk about revenge porn, but I was revenge fucking, really. And sex for me, it wasn't an intimate act. It was a performance.
But for me, it was kind of like me taking back my power, because even though it wasn't a big deal, sex wasn't a big deal then to me. It was more so, I'm just going to get you just because, I'm going to get what I want and then just be done with it. I think it was more of a, it was done to me, I'm going to do it to you now. It took me a long time to allow people in, because I'm, was very cautious, like I said, I didn't trust people. And I had a friend we met when I got off the streets, and she never judged me. She was always there, no matter what, no matter if I was acting my worst, just ugly. She never turned her back. And she was, I believe, like the first person I really, really opened up to and really allowed to be close to me. And we're best friends to this day. But it took a long time. But I had to get to a point, Rand, where I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive, the traffickers. I had to forgive people who caused so much hurt. And once I was able to do that, I was able to open up my heart and then allow people to come in and to love me. Even though it was a process, but it was work on my end. I had to do the work, and I had to allow it to happen, because I didn't stop it from happening, but I allowed it to happen because I did not want to stay in that condition. And I didn't want my heart to stay in that condition of not trusting, not loving. So I did the work. I have many people that I can call, friends, and they've proven friendship. I can say I love you to people now. I can hug people. And it's all about doing the work and allowing, and I'll just say this for me, allowing God to come in and heal my heart and heal the broken places. And I just feel that is the reason why I can reach back out now and help others, because I'm free to do that. I'm not in a place where I'm so broken and so hurt and so wounded that I can't see other people. Because, we can be in that place where you're so wounded and so broken, you can't see the brokenness and the hurt in other people. And I'm glad that I'm not in that position right now, I'm glad that I'm in a place of, you know, being healed to where I can go back now and reach those that are still wounded and hurting and not knowing how to get out of it.
And I love it. I love that you brought up the word work, because I know that people say that, oh, I have to go to work. And I'm like, yeah, no, that ain't work. I'm like, work is where you are really toiling and you are raging against, your own protective instincts. And the to me, work is healing. And so what did work through the healing, what did that look like for you? What did that feel like for you?
It was hard. It really was hard because um, if you've never had it, if you've never felt love, from, childhood, from your parents, from people, family members, it's, it's really hard to open up and allow people to love you that are not even family, that are not even, that wasn't there, or really they don't have to love you, So for me, it was hard, but I knew that it was necessary in order for me to move forward in life. I knew that I had to open myself up, and opening yourself up. Of course, there are you're opening yourself up to anything, pretty much. Hurt again. You can open yourself up to being hurt again. So I knew that I was taking a chance on opening up myself to more hurt or, just more pain. But I was just ready to do it. I was just ready to take on whatever it is I had to take on to move past where I was.
Yeah. I am curious, because I think that feeling our emotions rather than bypassing them, because, you mentioned that, you had turned into a cold-hearted bitch, and I'm like, yeah, no, I hear that. But, that's just a self-protectant measure, right? Like you're not actually a cold-hearted bitch. You are,
No.
You're just blocked off from feeling because it's overwhelming. And
right. Because I was in a lot of pain.
That's right. Yeah.
You're in a lot of pain, you're and that's the core. You're in a lot of pain that you don't know how to express.
Yes.
And, so you express it by, like you say, you become callous, hard, and I'm not going to let anyone penetrate. I'm not going to let anyone into my heart. And this just really just causing more pain.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's that imperviousness, that appearance of imperviousness that keeps you protected. And so when you start to shed those modalities, those tools that have kept you safe at a time, and you start to allow feeling back in, I don't know about you, but I think that was the scariest
part,
right? And this is something that I don't hear spoken about nearly often enough, which is there were days where I couldn't physically get out of bed. There were times when I know when I first got off the streets, something would trigger me, and I had no idea that I was even being triggered. I just knew my fight and flight instincts were engaged, and I would go run and find a small dark place, which for me was the attic of a barn. And I would go hide for hours, until my central nervous system would allow me to physically move again. And this, so there would be this active immobilization, or there would be an inability to speak. I lost my ability to verbally express what was taking place inside of me. And, it was a long time before I could cry. I don't know about yourself, but crying was a weakness. And for me, a weakness, I didn't want people to have it in. So I used to yawn. I would yawn in the face of someone screaming and yelling, in the face of somebody breaking down in tears. I would start yawning, and then that would enrage people because it appears as though I'm impervious and callous to their emotions. And so I think that it's so important for people listening to understand that relearning or just learning in general to feel the feelings, it feels dangerous. It feels as though your life might actually end. It is a threat to your very existence. Right?
Yes.
And that's normal.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I totally agree with what you just said, because for me, I too used to hide, and I would make everything dark, and I would rock. And I would rock. I would turn on some music, and I would rock for hours.
That's soothing.
And yeah, very soothing. And again, like you said, I would never cry. I think I was just the hardest. I mean, no emotions whatsoever. I didn't care what was going on. And when I started opening up my heart, and I would cry, and I would feel like, oh no, I don't cry, you know? and my friends would be like, oh my God, you're crying? You know, and I'm like, just be quiet. You know, like I didn't want to show any. I was like, what? I'm crying? I never cry. You know, so now I think I'm just a big baby. I cry more easily now.
I'm right there with you. I cry at commercials. I cry at commercials. I cry when every time I watch a horse movie, I'm like, I can't help it. I just start leaking all over the place. and I don't know about you, but like for myself, I still retain some embarrassment when I start to cry. I'm like, oh no, don't look at me. I'm ugly crying right now. Because I don't want them to see my, because now I cry when I'm excited, and I cry, when I'm overwhelmed. I'm like all the emotions just come flying out of me. And again, like I think it's so important for people that are moving through their own journeys to know that is a normal part of learning to process your emotions, and the expressing of our emotions too. I don't know about you, but when I started to feeling again, my expressions, I didn't know, I had no control over them. And so, there was a certain amount of, right? Like, I lacked absolute control over, so it would come out of me at like the weirdest times. Like I was watching a movie once and something got me all excited, and I'm in the middle of the theater with a friend, and I was the only person who, when something, I think it was The Wedding Crashers, and right at the end where the dude like walks up and punches somebody out, I'm like jumped up in the chair and I was like, woo! And I'm like looking around like, oh, my bad. What are some of your funniest recollections of, the start of expressing the emotions that you had learned to lock down after so long?
I think for me, I started being really silly. Just break out and just do something real silly, a silly dance, just at the weirdest times, and just seeing people crack up laughing. It's like, oh my God, you are so different, and I'm just like, yes, but and I'm so silly now, I love making people laugh. And so I think for me, just doing quirky stuff, just doing silly stuff, and then one thing they used to say, Chiquita, why you just say some of the craziest stuff out of the blue? Like we may be talking about, ice cream or something. I'm like, yeah, and that guy that had on those green pants. I just don't understand why he had on those green pants. And I'm like, what guy? I don't know. I'm just crazy. I'm just crazy happy now inside, I guess, So.
Yes, I totally understand that. Yeah. And I think that I think that joyfulness, that ability to spread that abundance that you've nurtured and allowed to grow within you. I mean, that's what we're talking about when we say you have to give from the saucer of your life. I mean, I can't remember where I first heard that term from, but you can't give from an empty cup, but you should always give from the overwhelm, of when your cup is overflowing and filling into that saucer, and you give from that saucer. That to me is exactly the perfect example. Is you have owned your feelings, and now that you're in not control, but now that you're in alignment with them, you are able to share and spread the joyfulness that makes you unique. And I think that that's so gorgeous. I just think that that's the best look on everybody.
Yeah.
Let's jump into forgiveness, because we brought it up, and it's a real point of contention for a lot of people. Like,
Yes.
Let's dig into that.
Well, forgiveness for me, I knew that I had to. Well, going through counseling, I knew that we brought up forgiveness and everything, and I knew that I had to, in order for me to move forward, I was going to have to forgive my parents and forgive, my pimps and all of those who did not protect me. And so it was not easy for me, but I had to. My counselor gave me homework to do, and I wrote out, how I felt about each person that had hurt me, or and so once I wrote it out, then I was able to say, I forgive you. And in order for me to truly knew that I forgave these people, was for me to be in their presence. And so once I went through the process of, saying I forgave them, well, I never saw the pimps again, so I'm not going to include them in that portion. But my parents, I knew that I had to face them in order for me to really know that I forgave them. And so I did that, and I told them, I forgive you. Not saying that we had a close bond or anything of that nature afterwards, but it was to the place where I could be cordial with them, and we could have some type of relationship. But I never brought up any of the past to them, because as an adult, I had to come to the understanding that I don't even know what occurred in their past, or what was happening with them at that time, or why they behaved the way that they behaved. And so I didn't want to, they didn't want to talk about it, so I wasn't going to push the envelope. I just forgave them for me, for me, in order for me to move forward. And the traffickers as well, I forgave them, and I just had to release it out of my heart. But forgiveness is a process. It's not, you're just going to say, oh yeah, I forgive you. It is work, because, going through that process, there might be a time where you start thinking about something that they did, and you're getting angry. And so to me, that's when okay, you really haven't forgiven them fully, because you're still holding on to this, so it's a process.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Keep going.
But you do know, you will know when you get there, when you're able to stand in their presence, or just if you're not in their presence, or you can just think about them or something, and it doesn't bother you like it used to.
I found, and again, everybody's journey is different, and everybody's dealing with different things. I found that for me personally, I never held any hate or ill wishing or even resentment for my traffickers or my pimps. It was that was never for me. That wasn't that was easier to walk away from. I held a lot of fear. I
Right,
carried
right.
the fear
Yeah.
with me for a long time. Like, oh fuck, they're gonna hunt me down and kill me if they ever find me. But so I lived in fear for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that the forgiveness for me really was about self-forgiveness. And that's where I struggled the most. And, I think um, that really centered around, that created a lot of self-judgment. And which led to a lot of this tug of war where I was working so hard to prove myself wrong or to prove everybody else wrong what they had said or assumed about what was going to be the outcome of my future. And then rising up, but then I would get triggered and I would self-sabotage and undo all the hard work that I had just done, right? And so that self-forgiveness was paramount to my success, as a human being. And so what was your experience like? Did you struggle with self-forgiveness? Did you struggle with,
I did.
judgment and worry and yeah.
I did struggle with that. I did. Because I had taken on a lot of responsibility of things that should not have. And I just felt like a lot of things were my fault.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did take a minute for me to forgive myself and to, move past that and, find my worth, because I had such low self-esteem and I just didn't feel like I was worthy. I didn't feel like I was, pretty. I didn't feel like I was anything, because that was just drilled into me. You're never going to be anything. You're never going to do anything. Nobody's going to want you. You're nothing. And so I had to learn how to, forgive myself and not take on responsibilities of others' actions towards me. And I had to learn how to love myself and to value myself and to know that I am worth something. I'm worth a lot to God, and I'm worthy, and I'm beautiful. And I feel like I'm beautiful on the inside and I'm beautiful on the outside. So now, my like you can't tell me nothing now. Like you can't tell me you can't tell me that I'm not gonna be this, I'm not gonna be that, because everything that you say I'm not going to do, I've strived to do the opposite. And not just to prove a point to you, but to prove that your words means nothing to me now.
That is that's really cool. Been there, get it. I'm like speaking my language. Love it. My language. Did you ever, and I'm asking you this as someone who struggled with it, and was it hard for you to just to share with people, the things that you had done as you were moving through your healing journey? When did you make apologies for it, or did you have guilty feelings around it, or were you able to make some kind of a mental shift that allowed you to step right into a place of no apology for for the things that you did in reaction to what had been done to you?
Mm, I I don't think I really try to give an excuse or anything. Um, I didn't. I just pretty much said, this is the way I was. This is what, you know, I didn't apologize. Just put it like that. I didn't apologize because, I was who I was. And, people will never fully understand what you go through because they don't understand, the PTSD and the depression. They don't understand because they have not gone through that type of journey. So trying to make people understand certain things is just not, they're not going to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, they still don't understand. And you get to a point where I've gotten to a point where even if I try to explain to you, what I was going through and why I did the things that I did, and you tell me, well, that doesn't make sense, or I don't understand why you had to act that way, then you're never going to understand them. You're just not going to get it. Some people are just not going to get it, but I just tell people this is who I was, and this is the process I had to go through to get to where I am right now. But I'm not going to apologize for being who I was back then. I'm not ashamed of who I was back then. I've Because that's just who I was. That's where I was. I mean, you know what I mean? That's
Mm-hmm.
So I have apologized for hurting people, you know, in that process, or when I was, back then. I have gone back and I've apologized to people in terms of, if I really know that I hurt them,
Mm-hmm.
I have gone back and apologized. And but I didn't go through the whole thing of, well, I did it because, this happened to me. I didn't do that. I just, this is who I was at the time, and I was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important, and
Mm-hmm.
and I've myself, like you, that's where I'm at now too, where rather than giving them all the reasons, I
Mm-hmm.
now just say that must have really hurt you, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sorry that was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but that was a process. There was quite a few years in there where I felt the need um, to tell them all the things, trying to make myself understood, or trying to find a way to work through my own process of understanding what were my decisions. So for those of you out there listening, if you find yourself scrambling to explain to people why you made the choices, just know that that is part of the process. There are going to be times when you will scramble to explain yourself to people that are not going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay, because
Mm-hmm.
that's part of your process.
Right.
And you have to just go through that in order to learn yourself,
Right.
so that's like, uh, there's there's nothing to be sorry for, but there is a lot to take away, you
Yes.
know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh my
And
goodness.
it can be done. It can be done. I mean, you can heal from this. You can,
Mm-hmm.
and just know that everyone's, journey through the healing process is not going to be the same. There's no time limit. There's no, you know, just go at your pace and just know that it can be done. Know that
Yeah.
you do not have to remain stuck.
It
You
is
can, you
not.
can, no,
It is not a lifetime sentence, you guys.
no,
That's what we're here to tell you. It's a process. It's a lot of work,
mm-hmm.
but when you get to I don't know, I don't want to say when you get to the other side, because I don't think that there is another side, but when you shift into alignment with your purpose, when you begin to unpack and unfold and to feel the grace and the love,
Yes.
um, of just your own agency, really, it is magnificent. I think it's tenfold what I ever thought I was going to be capable of ever feeling again.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You hit that on.
It's well, I don't want to bring this to an end. I don't. I want to keep going, but I know that it's a lot to process. I mean,
It's really good. I know.
The conversations that we're having, they are, they're not light. They are a lot to take in, and so it has just been my pleasure to have you here with us today and to be able to have this conversation with somebody as beautiful and enlightened and abundant and prosperous as you. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really do. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I really hope that it helps someone,
Yes, that is what we're all hoping. I mean, that's why we're showing up. That's why we're here at the table. It's we want to be the people that we needed when we were younger, in hopes that helps to shine a light for somebody that's sitting in the dark. And we just want you guys all to know that we are here. We are here to hold your hand. We are not here to guide you out. We are here to hold your hand as you process your own journey.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Chiquita, so much. Where can people find you if this resonated with them, if they want to connect, if they want to reach out and get to know you a little bit better?
Well, my social media is on Instagram. It is I am a Ruby to you, which is the number 2, the letter U. On Facebook is author Chiquita Tillman. You can email me. My email address is iamarubytoyou@gmail.com. And my website is iamarubytoyou.com.
You forgot to tell them about your book.
I'm so sorry. Yes, I am an author also. My book is called I Am a Ruby, Not a Sapphire, which can be found on Amazon and also my website, iamarubytoyou.com. And you would want to get that book.
Yes, you do. Thank you so much. I can't wait. I can't wait for our next conversation. I'm already excited.
Yes, me too. I can't wait. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And everybody, you know what? We love you. We really do. Yes. And we say that as people who struggle to say, I love you and here I love you. To please believe us. When we say we don't have to know you to love you, it's very, very true. And, if this episode resonated with you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We love your feedback. It is important. It's what helps to keep us motivated to continue on the journey that we're on as well. And so please reach out, leave comments, leave reviews, tell your friends. And, we are just so grateful for every single one of you that continues to show up, not just for us here, but that you continue to show up for yourself. So you guys have a wonderful day, and we will see you or hear from you or speak to you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Disclaimer. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the opinions or viewpoints of the host, producer, other guests, or sponsors. I, Rayanne K. Irving, am not, nor have I ever been, a doctor or therapist, and none of what I say is intended for professional or medical advice.